Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me on today's CoolCare Masterclass. We'll be looking at managing your staff levels in CoolCare, so if we're looking around absences and that side of things. So, as I'm sure you're all aware, CoolCare is here to make operating your care home easier, more efficient, and more profitable. And today we're going to look at how to make things a little bit easier running with homes on the staffing side of things. So, if anyone does have any questions as we're going through today's session, feel free to answer any questions. You can ask them through Zoom itself using the Q&A option. And a member of our team is on hand to answer any questions you've got, and we'll have time at the end of the session to answer any of the questions people may have as well. So what we'll look at today is managing our staff levels during stuff like absences and holidays for our staff members, and how we can use that to kind of managing the absences on the system, different things we might need to know about. So stuff like adding absences reasons onto our system, say why people may be off on certain days, managing our calendar, things like our holidays and absences on there, and then how we can then manage the system to find cover for those shifts afterwards, whether that's through finding staff cover from our staff members or using the agency ledger to bring in agency shifts to cover those and instead. So, plenty to look at. And as I say, as we're going through any questions, you can use that Q&A option and we can answer any questions anyone might have. I'm just going to swap over to my demo system now and we'll get things underway. All right, if I share my screen there, we should all see CoolCare on there now. So, first thing to look at is one little thing in the background that's going to help with our absences. So adding absences to CoolCare is when, if people are off, staff members are off sick, or any reason essentially isn't a holiday, you would add it in as an absence on CoolCare. And you can have a variety of reasons for why people may be off on those days. Now, those reasons are actually controlled by yourself in CoolCare through your lookups. You can add to that list of reasons, and actually there's a couple additional settings relating to them that can affect different things within the system. You can find those if you click your name in the top right corner on CoolCare. Depending on your access to the system, you might find under that list the lookups. So if we click into that, these lookups, to just briefly explain, are essentially different drop-down menus within CoolCare that you can customize with different options on there for them. Some of them relating to our staffing, some of them related to our residents, and some even related to our kind of general care home stuff for maintenance and inquiries on there as well. But the one we're interested in for today is this one here in our staff lookups, the reason for absence, which, as you might assume, it is when someone is made absent, the reason why they're absent on that day. Like I say, essentially any reason that isn't a holiday, you would add it in as an absence, and you'll have a set list of reasons to choose from. There'll be a preset list in CoolCare already, so if you're using it to say, you'll imagine there'll be a list in there for you to look at. But mine will be might be slightly customized compared to yours. You can add to this list, you can customize the options that are in there. You can remove anything you don't want to use from this list as well. With that, but to add one on, you would just click the insert button at the top of this page, and you can then fill out the details. So the reason for the absence, just whatever you want to call it, you can pop it in there. And there's a couple extra options surrounding this that you can add in as well, such as if this absence type would count towards Bradford factor. If you use Bradford factor calculations for your absences, CoolCare can track that and calculate them for you. And only certain absence types might count towards that, others may not. So you can choose on there if they would. You can also choose the absence type, as you see there, if it's long-term or short-term. Just saying in a couple of our reporting options, they will kind of exclude any staff members that are on long-term absence or flag those up in there with that. So anything long-term can also affect stuff on the system in different ways. And you would then add those on, and you see them on the list there. For example, I've got one there for short-term sickness, which is just simple as that. So short-term sickness is what I'll see on the drop-down list when I'm choosing the absence and creating it. This one does count towards Bradford factor calculations, and it's a short-term absence on there. So that's the kind of things that those absence reasons can be for you, for a separate one there, long-term medical, slightly different. This one doesn't count towards Bradford factor, and is a long-term absence in there as well. And similarly, on the same vein, maternity is a similar kind of thing as there. So you can have full control over these and customize them to have whatever reasons you would want in your system, and to make them say count towards different things in there. By default, I believe the absences will not count towards Bradford factor. So if you do want to use Bradford factor calculations for tracking your absences in CoolCare, make sure to go into the absence reason lookups and enable it for those that would need it on there. This then, as I say, feeds into your absences as we're creating them on our calendar. So we have our reasons in there, and now if someone is absent, we can add those on for them. A good way to see if someone is absent or might need an absence adding into the system for them is actually through your dashboard here. If you have this widget on your dashboard, staff on shift, it tells us about who's currently clocked in at the moment, and if your rota set up, if they should be clocked in as well. And you can easily spot anyone that is AWOL. As you can see there at the bottom of the list, Julia here was due to clock in at 7 a.m. She hasn't, so the system has saying she's AWOL on here. And so that would be something for us to look into, and we can add in an absence for her. So in this case, to add in the absence, we would go to our staff section, into our calendar under there. In your calendar here is where we can add anything we need on holidays, absences, training. You put them on here, and then it lets the rest of the system know what's going on. So if I want to add in an absence for Julia for today, we would essentially click on today's date, which you can see is highlighted on there, the 25th. Click on that, and then we can choose what we're adding in, whether it's a holiday, absence, or training. In this case, we're going to be adding it in as an absence. And so then we can fill out our details. So firstly, who the absence is for, which staff member it would be that's absent today, and it'll just be a list of all your staff members you can choose from in there. So I've got Julia here, I can select from that list. If you were notified of the absence, when you were notified, the date notified in the top right corner, you can see there. So it might say she's called us up earlier and said she's not going to show up today. So we can say we were notified of it today. When the absence is, so it's currently just set to today's dates for the entire day in there. You can change those dates if you need to extend the absence in there. You can even pop in the times there if it was just part of the day they're absent for something like an appointment, and they would just have to leave early or just partly absent. You can pop the times in there if you need to. But if it's for the full day, you can just leave it as is. That's perfectly fine in there. Then you've also got the reason. So as I've just seen those lookups there, you can choose the different reasons that you've got set in the system, whatever it might be. You can also actually choose a custom reason if you choose that at the top, and then actually just type in the box. But custom reasons don't count towards Bradford factor. They would just be there as a separate thing if you needed it by default. Otherwise, to say it's always good to choose a set reason if you've got one in there. So we can say, Julia here's called in sick, so we're going to pop it in as a short-term sickness for today. You've then got a few extra options with absences as well. You can mark it as a continuing absence, and that would be where someone's, say, called in sick, for example. We don't know when they're going to be better. We don't know when they're going to return. So we can mark it as a continuing one. What that will do day by day is essentially update the absence for you. So rather than you having to come in each day, edit the absence, make it a day longer, etc., whatever you'd need to do, instead the continuing absence can just update itself for you. So come tomorrow, that continuing absence would then be 2 days long, 3 days, etc., for as long as it needs to be, as long as that person is, off sick in this case. When they then return, you can just untick that continuing absence option, and that will stop the absence from updating any further, and that's then done with or confirmed on there. As well as that of absences, and you've got 2 extra options there. Self-certified, if they're off sick, you can mark it as self-certified on there. Or if they do have a doctor's note as well, you can pop it in there and even pop in an expiry date for that doctor's note. We might say it's just self-certified, they don't have a doctor's note for it. And any additional notes we want to pop in for any additional details, we can type in it down the bottom there. But as I save this, I'm going to keep it as an unauthorized absence to start with, which is just if I save that on there just to show you, pops it on my calendar there. But that hasn't quite let the rest of the system know yet. We've left it as unauthorized, which means we still might be finding out what's going on and finding out some more details before we let the rest of the system know. And any unauthorized absences will show up on your dashboard. For this next widget here, calendar actions required. And it might be the case where only certain people can authorize the absences. So it might be some people can add the absence onto the system to say this person is absent today, but another person might need to go in, double check that, and authorize it from there. Either way, these unauthorized absences will pop up in the widget here, calendar actions required. And if I click on it from the widget, it just takes me straight to my calendar. It even narrows it down, puts it into a 2-week view in here. And you can see there it's flashing at me, the one that I need to deal with. Obviously, in this case, it's obvious because it's from today's dates. So yeah, it might be one person goes in, creates the absence to say this person is off today. Another person then goes in, checks that absence, confirms all the details, and can then authorize it. You also see on the absence on the right-hand side here. So if there was multiple days, you'd be able to authorize them all in one go from there. And you'll also see these hours come across. And that's the hours of the absence that's come across from the rota. So this person's rotated in for a shift. It will then say how many hours of the shift that rota should be. How many hours, yes, that shift should be on there. And that'll be the hours of absence that's popped into there for them. And those absence hours is going to go over to your timesheet to say how many hours they were absent for today. That's but you can manually override that if you would need to as well. But the big thing is, once you then mark that as authorized on here and save it, this box will pop up asking me, do I want to remove that person from the rota for this day? So this person's off sick today. We don't, they're not doing their shift anymore, so we don't need them on the rota. We can say yes to that, and it will remove them from the rota shift. Once the absence is authorized, it will be done on there. And so now that will affect CoolCare in a couple of ways. It will add the hours of absence to our timesheets to say those persons having 12 hours of absence in today rather than their regular shift. And it will also update my rota in a moment. I'll show you on there. Also, if I go back to my dashboard, the staff on shift widget will update because that person's no longer on their rota shift. They will no longer show as AWOL on the widget here because they're now absent with leave as expected, so they're no longer on their shift when they're expected to be there. So you can just add in the absences via the calendar through that and pop them all in from there. If the person was just on holiday, just to mention as well, you can add in holidays very much the same way, just clicking on your dates, adding in as a holiday request with that, choosing which staff member it's for, what days the holiday is for in there as well, and then you can authorize or decline those holidays similarly in the same manner. Let's say the main difference being with holidays, obviously, it's going to use up their holiday entitlements, but it's going to still take them off the rota, add the rows onto the timesheet very much the same way as it would with an absence. And users, staff members can put in holiday requests from your staff portal, which will then feed through onto here through your dashboard as well. With that, this calendar actions required widget also tells you about any holidays that we need to authorize or decline, and they'll then pop up on your calendar for you to deal with separately from there. But the outcome is essentially the same. It's going to take them off the rota, put the hours on the timesheet, and mark it as authorized. If it is authorized, of course. If it's declined, it's not going to do anything of that for a holiday in that case. But the effect on our rota is still the same thing. So if we go to our rota, we can see on here. Second. If I open up my rota to look at my shifts for today, I can now see there. We've got to where Julia was originally assigned to a shift on our shift pattern here. She's now been unassigned, and it even says because of an absence there that she's been taken out of that shift. And that's also affected our budgets at the top there, so that it's gone red at the top there to say we've got a shift missing. We're under budget, so we need to find cover for that shift as we can. And there's a couple of ways you can do that. So from the shift itself, if I click into it on here, we can see the details of anyone that would be available to do that shift. Anyone that's a care assistant in my home essentially can do this shift on here, or even if they're another home and they've got a pool position in this home, they can be put on the shift here. And you can see all those details on the left-hand side, so the staff member's name, a tick if this is their main position on the staff record, so it's their main role for them. A tick if this is a pool position for them. If they're from another home in the company and they're pool staff, it can be put into this shift from there, but you can still see that. And if they're bank staff, they'll have a tick in the column there as well. So, so we've got a full selection of staff to choose from here, aside from a few that are already assigned to other shifts, they're grayed out down the bottom. We can also see some details there. So if they've got a contact number on the staff record, you can see that through here for them. And that means you can easily get in touch with someone if it's a short notice thing. You can see the number there, give them a ring, see if they're able to do the shift right away from there, from that. Or alternatively, you can message them from the rota as well. So you can send them a text message from the rota, asking them if they're able to cover this shift on this day, and we can see who's available for it. And that might be more for if you're looking at stuff in advance on there with that on here, but it works the same kind of way. Actually, maybe 1 second. Haven't got anyone set up with the right number for that on there. Let me just do this on a different shift to show you the example. So if I click on a shift here, I'm going to use one of these ones I've got. Oh, that's not my example. Sorry about this. We'll go with this one here. So if you need to find cover for a shift, so it might be more in advance that you need to find cover for a shift rather than doing it immediately on there. This would be where the messaging is useful for that. So I can say I need to find someone to cover this shift for this weekend. So I'm going to then click on the shift, and we can see the option to message staff for anyone that has a mobile number on the staff record. You can then click that message staff button. It will send them a text message. It will say on here they've not responded. That means the message has been sent to them. They've just not responded to it yet, as you might guess. And they can then respond to it in their own time, yes or no, on the mobile. They'll receive a text from CoolCare giving them the details of this shift. And from that, they can then say if they're available to do it or not. I'm just going to do on my mobile phone right now. If you bear me 1 moment, I can say that yes, they're able to do that shift. And that will then feed back to CoolCare on here. If I click into that shift that's just been now responded to, we can see there it's got a little green tick to say, yes, they're able to do that shift, and tells me the exact date and time they've responded as well. So we know that they're able to do it. It's good if you've got multiple people you're sending these messages to, you can see who's responded to it earliest. If it's a case of, first come, first serve, you can see who's available for it on there and when they've responded nice and easily. The main thing is, it's still only telling you who can do the shift. It's not going to choose someone to do the shift for you. So CoolCare will never assign someone to a shift without you choosing them first. You always have to go back in and then select who you want to do the shift from the responses you've got. So in this case, Harry said yes, he can do that shift. We're going to click on him there. And that will assign him into that shift to say he's doing that on that day now. And it will even send him another text message to let him know as well. You can keep an eye on those using this cover request button at the top from there. This will tell you about any shifts you send out messages for, if people have responded to them, what responses they've given. So in this case, I sent out a message for a shift on a Friday and one person said no for that. It looks like someone's also said they can cover a shift on the Saturday, which we might want to look at. So that's senior carer. That one is slightly different, just to show you on here. This one has got a little exclamation mark rather than a ticker across. This one, that means that this one has come from our staff portal. So the staff portal is a separate thing that your staff members can access on their own phones, tablets, whatever they might use, and they can interact with CoolCare in a couple of ways. One way they can do that is through your rota here. They can see the shifts that are available that they might be able to pick up, and they can put in a request for it. So if you see there's exclamation marks on the rota shift there, it means the staff member's been a bit more proactive and they've actually said they could do this shift straight away if you want them to do it. So it saves you having to message them and find out who can do the shift. They can see it themselves and choose their own availability from there. And very much works the same way in the end. You just choose the person to do the shift. If they have put in that request, it will assign them to the shift and then they can go from there and be informed of it, I say, through the portal and through their own messaging. But that doesn't help us for today's shift, of course. That's for some future ones. But for today, where we're still with that absence, we need to find cover a bit more urgently. And, I've had a ring around. I can't find a staff member to do it. Instead, I'm going to have to assign the shift to agency, bring in an agency to help us with the shift for today. You can see the button on the top of this shift there, the brown one there, covered by agency. If I click on that, I can, as it says there, assign this shift to an agency instead. And we can fill out a few details that will create a record in our agency ledger. So the name of agency and reason for agency, these two are actually lookups in the CoolCare, similar to the absence reasons, to say, what agencies you would use with the name of agency in there. We can choose different ones we've got that I've set up on my system, as well as the reasons for agency. Again, a list of set reasons you can have for choosing agency on that day. In this case, it's sickness. If you know the name of the person currently agency, you can type their name in there. And you can even say if they're covering for someone who's off sick or on holiday as well. So I can say they're covering for Julia, who we made sick earlier. Well, that's and any additional notes we might want. We're just going to pop it in there. Last minutes cover. Save that. And that will then assign this shift to agency. You can easily see what agency is being used on your rota as it sticks out quite clearly, brown compared to blue. With that. And that will also create an entry in our agency ledger. This is under the staff section here. This is where you can see a list of any shifts that have been assigned to agency within a specific date range. By default, we will do it from your previous month, essentially, a month previous to today and a month future today. So they'll kind of get a 3-month space in there, 2-month space, excuse me, in there with that. And so you can see any of those shifts within those times that have been assigned to agency with that. So I can see the one that I've popped in for today. And if I click on that shift from here, you've got all the details that have been filled out from what the shift is from the rota, as well as the details I popped in on the right-hand side there, the name, reason for agency, the staff they're covering for, and the notes I popped in as well. And by default, the state will be as planned, to say it's one that's planned in to happen, but might not be done yet on there. But you can change that state in here just by changing that to completed. Once the shift has been done, you can even mark it as invoiced, if you've been invoiced for it as well. Or if it's one that didn't happen in the end, you could even mark it as cancelled in there. So we're going to say it's kind of planned, underway at the moment. It's happening right now, but it's not fully completed yet. But we can pop in the costings as well of this shift. So the hourly rates, how much that would be. The hours worked, how many hours they're working on there. So it's going to be 12 hours in that. And that will work out a total paid for the hours in there. And any additional costs, you can even add in a transportation cost if you've got anything like that, so you can pop in as well if we need to. Save that. And now we're adding the costings on there, as you can see. Pops it all in there. And you can see this box at the top there will tell us about our cost there, the worked hours, transportation, and the total cost for all the shifts in there, which in my case is just the one shift I've got here, but you can extend that date range, as I say, if you need to. So if I want to do any shifts I've got from this year up to today, we'll do it from the 1st of January up to today's dates. And that should give me a few more shifts in there, as you can see, some ones that are planned and completed in there, with their own costings in there, which updates my work costs in there as well. So you can see a full list of all the agency shifts you've got in there, and you can update those as you need to. So all these previous ones, I might just mark those as completed to say they have been done and pop in their details. So again, we're just going to pop in some information for that one. Should be in there as well. And mark these other ones as completed to say they have been done. And even they might have even been invoiced at this point as well, etc. So you can always update these agency shifts as you need to, pop them all in there. And then once they have been completed and whatever else you need to do them, you could even export this out from CoolCare to get it out of the system. You see the option there to export it. Just takes the information in your agency as you're looking at right now, pops it into an Excel spreadsheet to get out of the system if ever you need it outside of CoolCare. And that report there just tells you about all those shifts that we just looked at, puts them all in one place rather than have to see for them all individually. Simple as that. So yep, that agency ledger is good for keeping track of those agency shifts where you need them, keeping track of the costs of them as well, and then getting that information out of CoolCare as you need to. And you can even filter that list, so not to mention, by default, we're just looking for anything planned, completed, or invoiced, but if you want to see cancelled ones as well, I can apply that and see a whole host of cancelled ones, my goodness, from this year that never happened in the end. So yeah, that's your agency ledger there. Good for tracking your agency usage where you might need it. Remember, if you're adding in shifts on the rotor, they can then filter through onto the agency ledger here. But if you're not using the rotor on CoolCare, you can just insert at the top here and add them in manually as well. So even if you're not using the rotor side of things, you can still use that agency ledger to track any agency usage if you would need to. But yeah, let's see. Plenty of ways CoolCare can help you out with keeping a track of absences, holidays to staff members, and how that then affects the system, and helping you find cover for those shifts as well, whether that's short notice stuff or a bit further down the line where it might need to be. And even getting staff members to be proactive with using that staff portal, the best way to get them using it so they can then be proactive and see when they're available if you need to find cover shifts as you're planning stuff out. But yes, that would be all to show you for today's masterclass. Just before we wrap up though, a couple of things just to mention. If I go back to my presentation. Here we are. If you are interested in having any further training on CoolCare, feel free to get in touch with us, whether it's overseeing financing, payroll, rota management, tracking of residents, anything you think of, we can do training for it, whether that's online or in person as well. And in case you're interested, you may be entitled to some free of charge training as part of your CoolCare subscription. At least two 30-minute free of charge training sessions on there would be available to use up. Feel free to contact us at training and we can check your entitlements and see if you have training available and get something booked in for you if you'd want one. That's all I have to say for me now is thank you for joining. And I'll see you next time. We'll be looking at how CoolCare interacts with PCS in our next session. Yes, thank you all for joining. If you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A. We'll leave the room open for a few minutes if anyone has any questions, but if not, thank you all for joining.